everyone. Today I want to tackle a question I get all the time, which is I am a beginning sewer or I'm new to sewing and I want to know what kind of sewing machine I should purchase. I figured I'd make a little short video on it just because, like I said, I do get this question all the time. So if this is your first time stopping by my channel, my name is Megan Grace. Welcome to Megan Grace DIY. And I've been sewing for 26 years. I started sewing when I was 8 years old on my grandmother's sewing machine that she used to get herself through the Great Depression. I come from 5 generations of women who have sewn, so it's safe to say I do know my way around a sewing machine or two. When you start to search for sewing machines, it can feel a bit overwhelming. There's so many functions and cool things that they can do, and some are electronic and they have bells and whistles and all this crazy stuff. Really, you just need the basics. You need to be able to do a couple different stitches, like a straight stitch and a zigzag and a buttonhole. You want it to have, your stitch length, your stitch width. This has a little cutter on the side that you can just cut the thread while you're sewing. You don't need this crazy over-the-top machine for your first machine, okay? And one thing I think I've learned after 26 years of sewing is, the computerized ones, they're great, they're trendy, they're cool. I don't think they're as good of a choice as just a regular sewing machine. I had a Janome for 15 years and it was a computerized one, and it's cool because I can plug in how I want the stitch length and what stitch I want to sew. But when it started to fail, what started to fail was the computerized parts. The plug wasn't plugging in right and it was shorting out, and when I had to put in how to do a bobbin, that was shorting out. So what started to go first was the computerized parts. So I just think, a really, simple workhorse is what you're going to need to get started. So first, we're going to talk about the Singer brand of sewing machines. Singer has been around, I believe, since the 1850s. When the individual sewing machine was invented, they would actually have floor shows where they had these beautiful models exhibiting the sewing machines and getting people to buy them and take them home. Singer it's a workhorse. It is a great, great brand. This machine I have right here was actually a very, very generous donation from a friend of mine who her mother had bought a sewing machine, or her father had bought the machine for her mother, and they weren't using it. So she said, I'd rather have somebody who is going to use it. So this is a Singer Heavy Duty 4423. So the reason that this machine is labeled heavy duty is because it runs at about a 30% faster speed than a normal sewing machine. So I wouldn't recommend a heavy duty sewing machine to a brand new sewer. It's gonna have a little too much power for what you want. It also pushes the needle in a bit harder than a regular sewing machine, which I need because I go through thicker fabrics sometimes. So this machine, I have loved it. It is great. It works beautifully. It sews beautifully, does everything I need. But if you are looking at Singer brands, there's a lot of really great options that are in that lower price point. Singer brands like the Model 227 is a really, really good one to consider. And all the sewing machines I'm going to recommend today are under $200. You really do not need to spend more than that on your first sewing machine. Please don't spend more than that on your first sewing machine, because one of the things I hate to hear is people who are like, oh yeah, I bought a sewing machine, 5 years ago, it's been collecting dust in my closet. If you're gonna do that, if that's gonna happen, I don't want you to put a lot of money out at first, okay? But if you do buy a sewing machine, please use it. I'd really like to know that you're using it and learning how to sew and making some cool projects. So yeah, Singers are awesome. That would be my top recommendation for a beginner level sewing machine. So like I mentioned before, I started sewing on a Janome. It was actually my high school graduation present from my parents, and it worked great. I mean, for 15 years, it worked really great. As I said before, the computerized parts were what started to go first. So I wonder if a Janome without the computerized parts would have lasted me a little bit longer. But I would recommend the Janome 128 as a beginning sewing machine. Again, simple. You don't need anything crazy and over the top for your first sewing machine, and it's at a really reasonable price point. So what I want to talk about next is the brand Bernina. I think Bernina is a great brand. When I taught at the high school level, we had all Berninas for our students, but one of the issues I take with Bernina is the price. Right before I filmed this video, I Googled Bernina beginning sewing machine, And what came up as the first link was the sewing machine that was $1,500 and then marked down to, I think, like 12. And that's insane. You do not need to spend $1,500 on not even a high-level sewing machine. It's just too much money. So if you happen to come across like a beginning level Bernina that's $200, $300, that's great. But I'm not going to give my recommendation to Bernina just because I do think they're a bit on the pricey side for no reason. And lastly, I want to mention the Brother brand. I have personally never owned a Brother. I've worked on a Brother machine here and there, but I do hear a lot of really great things from my students that if they buy that as their beginner machine, that it works really well, they really like it, they feel like it's user-friendly. So I found the Brother C35055 as an intro level machine, again, under $200. My only concern with it is that it's computerized. And as I said, I'll say it one more time, computerized makes me nervous. Just because computerized it can go bad. And if it goes bad, then your whole machine's bad. And versus, you know, a metal part that might break, you can replace that. So before I sign off, I just want to do a quick review of the basics of looking for your first sewing machine. One is you do not need all the bells and whistles when you're starting out. You don't need embroidery, you don't need special stitches besides, you know, a zigzag stitch and a buttonhole. You don't need to go super crazy with your first machine. Less is more, okay? Also, the more metal that's in your sewing machine, the better. A lot of new sewing machines tend to have a lot of plastic parts, and plastic parts break easier. So the more metal in your machine, the better. And I really do recommend avoiding computerized machines at this point. I think they are great when you're at a higher level and when you really, you know, when you're embroidering, when you're doing quilting, when you've got like a really specific goal in mind. But for your first machine, I would not get a computerized machine. And then my last recommendation would be that if you are looking for a new sewing machine, check Facebook Marketplace, check, you know, any recycle groups, or put like a Facebook message up and see if you have a friend that has a sewing machine that's been sitting around and they haven't used it, or they'd be willing to part with it for a really like low amount of money. Just because if you've never sewn before, it might not be for you. I hope with my heart of hearts that it is for you, but if it's not, you don't want to like sink $300-400 into a piece of equipment that you don't end up using. And before I close this out, I do want to point out I'm not affiliated with any of these brands. I don't get any kind of like kickback for the links. I am not nearly a big enough channel to get that, but I just wanted to kind of share the information that I've learned over 26 years of using one of these guys. I get the question all the time, you know, want to buy my wife a present, what kind of sewing machine should I get? So Singer is my top recommendation. The Singer 227 is a really great intro model, but there's a lot of great intro models in Singer. And I really do hope that you found this information today helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. You can always find me at Megan Grace DIY on Facebook and Instagram. And if you're not already a subscriber, I'd really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. Have a great day, everyone.